Welcome back to the Center in the City podcast. I'm your host, Wade Brill, and I am so glad you are here. This podcast is all about supporting you staying grounded and centered amid the hustle and bustle and twists and turns of living in this modern day life. In the Soul podcast, we are doing a deep dive into one of the most important topics, I think, ever. And really, this journey of understanding your needs, understanding what needs are as a human, how foundational needs are, and how having needs doesn't mean you are selfish or needy or obnoxious, but it means you are a human. And we're going to talk about this humanness, how we can own this practice of understanding our needs and how it's foundational to us living a life that not only feels aligned, but supporting us building meaningful relationships, because relationships as social creatures are essential to our well-being. They're essential to us thriving. And understanding our needs helps us communicate and be in community with one another. Now, this topic is something I do go deep with my clients on. It's something we learn and relearn and practice and explore from so many different angles because of how essential it is. So wherever you are listening to this podcast episode, you're probably going to want to take some notes. So make sure you have your note section of your phone handy or your journal, wherever you're listening, on a walk, cooking. This episode is about to change your life. So let's settle in and let's get centered. As I say the word needs, what comes up for you? How does that word even land in your body? Needs. Gently repeat it to yourself and notice. If you are like me, I notice my first physical reaction is, ooh, that feels uncomfortable. Or, ooh, I don't have those. Or, ooh, what are those? Or, ooh, I don't needs feels like I'm taking up too much space or I'm selfish. There are so many different connotations that I've heard when exploring this topic with people that it's really just the beginning of how juicy and important this conversation is. Over the last few years, I've been on my own personal journey of understanding my needs in a whole new way. And I want to thank one of my teachers, Oren J. Sofer, for being not only a meditation teacher of the Dharma, but also a nonviolent communication teacher who has really woken me up to how foundational needs are as human beings and how we can relate to our needs in a more powerful way. So what are needs? There's Maslow's hierarchy of needs where he talks about foundational needs, food, water, shelter, rest. He talks about safety being the next hierarchy of needs, security, stability, protection from harm, love and belonging, our need for connection, intimacy, family, friends, our need for esteem, respect, recognition, confidence, achievement. And then the top of his pyramid is the self-actualization need of purpose, of creativity, of living one's potential. And then Dr. Rick Hansen, who is a psychologist, also very much in the mindfulness and meditation world, he talks about there being three categories of needs, that everything breaks down into a need for safety, a need for satisfaction or meaning in life, and a need for connection. In the nonviolent communication world, which was created by Marshall Rosenberg, he has a whole list of needs that are categorized, a whole list of needs that you can Google and search for, needs of connection, physical well-being, autonomy, meaning, celebration, integrity, right? There's so many different needs that he notices humans are searching for or wanting, or to use the word, needing. And in the nonviolent communication world, something that I learned from Oren J. Sofer was that our needs very much influence our emotions, which then very much influence our actions, which then contribute to our behaviors. And I love how Oren talks about this of we communicate and we've learned how to communicate as humans to meet our needs. Now, if you're listening to this and you're like, what is she talking about? Like, I don't really have needs. I'm just like living and breathing and, surviving. I'm here to tell you and remind you that you do have needs. And one of the gifts of having a mindfulness practice and strengthening our mindfulness muscles is that we learn to pay attention. We learn to gain awareness of our needs that are present. And a lot of the time, it's complicated, it's murky. And starting to learn and label and note our needs has been one of the most healing and transformational practices, not only in my life, but witnessing it in my clients. I've shared this before on the podcast, but of course, in my own journey of self-discovery and introspection, dots are connecting always. And something that I learned a while ago was recognizing that my younger self, maybe around the age of 5 to 8, I would have these moments where I would get so full of emotion, so overflooded in my nervous system that I didn't have words to articulate what I was feeling. And so I would make a fist with my hands and I would shake and I would tighten my face and tighten my shoulders and just shake and look at my, mom or my siblings and just express my energy in that moment. And I didn't have the language to communicate my needs. And so it stayed bottled up in my body. Now, fast forward years and years later, what I started to recognize in my own personal journey, and this is pretty vulnerable, and I'm sure you can relate to it in your own way, I started to feel really irritable in a lot of areas of my life or emotionally reactive. And even though I have my meditation practice and even though I tried to be very conscious and self-regulated, I would feel these intense emotions and these outbursts that felt incongruent with how I wanted to be showing up and also like, what's going on? What's happening internally? And so I got curious, with a lot of curiosity and care and being able to sit and listen to myself and this desire to want to show up in a different way, in a way that aligned more with my values and who I know I am at my core. I recognize that below the frustration, below the agitation, below the irritability, I had needs that I wasn't acknowledging. I had needs of feeling seen. I had needs of feeling heard. I had needs of connection or safety that I needed to express, but wasn't. And so I would shove those feelings down or away and pretend those needs weren't there. And what would happen is they would explode in other directions, right? It would come out, the energy would come out sideways. Now, I notice this happens a lot with my clients, that they'll get caught in rumination. They'll get caught in anxiety or frustration because their needs are not being acknowledged. And so they're spiraling and they're spinning because they too haven't taken that time and or they don't have the skills yet to be able to name what's happening internally below the surface. And what we know from a psychological perspective is that when we can name the emotions, when we can name the needs, when we can name what's happening in the present moment, where our mindfulness muscles come into hand again, that's where we can practice taming it. And this is a psychological tool to be able to gain some distance. Because when we can name it, it creates some distance, creates some space between what's happening and our sense of self. And when we can create some space, we can look at it with a little bit more curiosity, and we can get to understand it with a little bit more spaciousness instead of feeling like it's eating us up or it's controlling us. We live in a world right now where everybody is obsessed with just being told what to do. Open an app and just tell me what to do, how to move my body, just tell me what I should be listening to on Spotify. Just give me the meal plan, tell me what to eat, right? We want somebody to give us all of the answers in some concrete formula, some concrete plan. But that doesn't work. It's not sustainable, because what we're doing is we're just giving more information to the system versus getting down to the root. And that's one of the reasons that I created my book, 100 Mindful Moments to Balance and Energize, in the way I did, because I wanted to offer a bunch of tools, a bunch of mindful moments, a bunch of these insights, these ways that you can practice holistic self-care. But I also wanted to empower you, the reader, to think about, what does this mean for me in my life? And how can I integrate this into my life so that it actually makes sense? And I can get to the root of why this mindful moment is important for me to practice right now. And what does this look like for me to be practicing and integrating this, versus me giving you all of the information that you need to do in this moment. If I told you how to practice that mindful moment, so for instance, if I told you how to practice, let's say, the mindful moment, create a daily adventure, which is part of the space section, the ring finger of our mindful hand of self-care. If I just told you exactly what to do for this mindful moment, it wouldn't have as much meaning for you, because you would just be getting told information, and then you'd be like, why am I doing this? Like, why is this valuable? But instead, when you read that mindful moment and you connect to, why am I picking this right now? What need of mine am I meeting right now? That helps you connect to this deeper layer of, how am I serving myself? How am I caring for my human needs in this moment? So the first journal prompt to integrate your mindful moment into your life is, what mindful moment tip feels the most aligned with your needs right now? And it's this question to pause and ask yourself, like, oh yeah, what are my needs right now? Do I have a need for movement? Do I have a need for freedom, for play? Do I have a need for stillness or rest? Do I have a need for creative expression, authenticity? So when we ask ourselves this question, what are my needs right now? It is huge. I have seen clients just be brought to tears when they ask themselves this question and sit with it, because it can be so tender to understand, wow, as a human, I have needs. Knowing our needs, naming our needs is empowering. It is empowering because it helps us live a more full life. And when we can then honor our needs, when we can act in alignment with our needs, that just brings so much clarity. That just brings this sense of, for me personally, like, oh, I feel deeply seen and held. And there's so much more ease in my nervous system. There is so much more sense of safety. There is so much more of this, like, I am held. I'm held by my community. I am held by the world. Now, I'm talking right now about needs from the I, and we have to remember that as an individual, we have needs, and the other people as individuals around us, our community, our friends, our families, our neighbors, the strangers on the street, in the subway, they also have their own needs. And so a lot of conflict happens because people's needs are not being met. Now, this is a really huge topic. Like, we can go into so many different directions about communicating and how to practice mindful communication around our needs and requests. And there's so many layers here, and it's a really deep practice. One of the areas that I want us to focus on in today's podcast, which is a very common area of tension that happens, I see this specifically with my clients, is how we then relate to our needs. So if we notice we have a need of recognition, or we have a need of intimacy, or a need of authentic expression, or a need of safety, if we name those needs for ourselves in the moment, if you slow down and can pay attention once you name that, right? When you listen inwards, you might start to then hear some sort of internal dialogue about how you then relate to your needs. So for instance, maybe there's a voice of judgment that's silly. You don't need that. Or maybe there's a voice of, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't have that need. Or for me, I noticed the other day as I was listening in, there was this inner voice that said, suck it up. Like, so what? You have that need, just suck it up. So when we slow down to pay attention to our needs, there's then that next layer to feel into, to be able to listen a little bit closer. How are we then relating to the needs that we're naming? Do we shove them down? Do we minimize them? Do we make them really big? Do we start to grasp for them like they are, we can only survive if we meet these needs? Do we, again, push them away? Do we ignore them? Do we numb them out? So paying attention to how we then relate to our needs is a huge piece of insight that can offer you a sense of empowerment if you're able to lovingly work with that voice. So for instance, in the last few weeks specifically, I had this conversation with a few different coaching clients where they noticed they were feeling frustrated at work because they weren't feeling acknowledged. And so we got more curious, and we went a layer down and asked, like, what's the need here? I'm hearing the emotion is frustration. What are you needing? And some of them shared, oh, I'm needing respect. Some of them shared, I want to feel seen. Another one shared, I want to know that I'm contributing. I want to know I have impact here. And so taking that moment to connect to that need, help them realize, oh, it's okay to feel this. Like, it's okay to have this need of impact. It's okay to want to be respected. When we can recognize that we have needs and that needs are universal, that our manager also has needs, that our partner also has needs, our parent also has needs, it then can help build more empathy with one another. It can help build more connection to know that everybody is just doing their best, trying to meet their needs. Now, for me, this is what self-care truly is, right? It's not about the external, like I went to the gym, I gave myself a bath, I took a mental health day, I did some journaling. It's about the need underneath that. Why are we doing those things for ourselves? What need are we serving? Are we serving our need for self-reflection, for safety, for rest, for authenticity? Like really getting clear on why we do the things that we do because it's meeting some form of a need. So I really welcome you in this moment. Let's just kind of pause together because I feel like I just shared a whole lot. I love this topic. But I really welcome you to just start to slow down your life and check in with yourself every hour. Just a gentle little 30-second check-in. And just ask yourself, what is my need in this moment? Do I have a physiological need, like I need to go to the bathroom, or I'm hungry? Or do I have a need of rest? Or a need for fresh air? A need for adventure? Like when you can slow down to just check in, even if you don't know what your need is, just the fact that you are asking yourself is huge. This is a lot of the work that we did in the Summer of Self-Care group coaching program, where we get to focus on our needs. We get to name and practice together naming our needs. We get to witness and hear that other people have needs, and it's empowering to be like, yeah, fuck yeah. I also have needs, you have needs, and that's okay. And part of the reason burnout happens is because we are not meeting our needs. And so we get exhausted, we get wiped out. We don't have any capacity in our nervous system because we are completely drained. We are not giving to ourselves. I do not do this practice perfectly. I just want to be very clear. It is still very much a practice that I am passionate about, a muscle that I am passionate about us all strengthening. Because when we can meet our needs, whether it's ourself meeting our own needs or communicating with others or working together with others to help meet our needs or share in needs, it feels so damn good. And it feels like we just get to honor these human lives. And it's not from an ego perspective, it's foundational to our human psychology. So once we can know that, my hope is that you recognize it's not selfish to have needs, that it's actually really beautiful and empowering. And it's a skill that we can also demonstrate to our kids, to our nieces and nephews, to our family. We get to model that, yeah, as a human being, and especially as a woman, we have needs. And I know a lot of you know that, but I think we are conditioned as women in society to constantly be serving other people's needs or trying to make other people happy or be the good girl. And that is a whole other thing to unpack. But underneath that, or in relationship to that, we still have needs. And we have to remind ourselves that we have needs and the people that we're around have needs. And I think when we can start to see that layer, it helps us just be like, we're all these human beings running into each other in life, all trying to meet different needs. And that's why it gets messy. That's why relationships are so messy, personal, romantic relationships, coworkers, like office politics. It all can get messy. And a lot of the time when we're in relationship to people, we aren't aware of what are our needs. And just imagine a world what our relationships could be like if we could not only just recognize our needs, but we could also be recognizing the needs of others. So I want to circle back to something I brought up a little bit ago around how are we then in relationship to our needs? Because another big blocker that comes up for people is a belief that we're not worthy to give us our own time or attention to meet our needs. Like we are not worthy as a living being, so we don't deserve to have our needs met. And that's a deep wound and place that if that's a voice or one of the voices that you might hear as you slow down to think about how you relate to your needs, I really welcome you to be super tender and loving to that place, because it sounds like there could be a lot of shame there. And that might be a wake-up call to do some deeper work with a therapist or a mental health expert to support you in really healing some of those places. Now, a lot of time in life, we're not going to have our needs met. So even if we can notice and name our needs and get really good at that, we can't guarantee that our needs are going to be met. And that in itself can also be heartbreaking. It can create a lot of discomfort or frustration or anger or resentment. And so learning to be then in relationship to the needs that aren't met is also a huge practice. And how can we offer ourselves some compassion of like, ouch, that hurts to not feel seen by my manager. Ouch, that hurts to not feel safe in this relationship. Ouch, that hurts, right? When we can kind of name it with compassion and care, it can also be like some love balm to that wound. And when we can then notice that there's even an ouch of this need wasn't met, it can help the rebound of us coming back to a more centered state, a place of more emotional regulation, equilibrium. It tends to be maybe the recovery is a little bit smoother or a little bit faster, or we don't linger as long in the woe is me conversation or the anger, but we tend to kind of come back to a more balanced baseline. In Rick Hanson's book, Hardwiring Happiness, he talks about how important it is for us as individuals to practice internalizing life experiences to support us meeting needs more effectively. So, for instance, a need for safety. Can we cultivate that feeling of safety within our own minds and bodies? So, can we feel safe and calm in our body? And again, calm, I did a whole podcast episode on kind of the dark side of calm. But when I talk about calm in this context, I'm talking about this place of being in a connected state. Our nervous system, according to the polyvagal theory, is in ventral vagal. We're in a state where we're feeling regulated, we're feeling safe, we're feeling socially connected. There's maybe compassion, there's curiosity, presence. They're all accessible, right? We're in a parasympathetic state. We can take note that, oh, I'm safe right now. I'm feeling this sense of calm. I'm feeling this sense of ease, of connection. To take that moment to really feel it in your body and let it become muscle memory. Let it become a felt sense that you can try to return to again and again, and know some strategies that also support you coming back to this state. For instance, maybe you've learned that calling this friend is really helpful when you notice you're spiraling out or spinning out and want to feel a sense of safety. But if you were to call this other friend that typically agitates you. It typically creates more frustration because you don't feel seen, you don't feel acknowledged, you don't feel safe. And so you learned a strategy of connecting to people that do make you feel safe. And then you know what safety feels like in your body. So for this other need of meaning and of satisfaction, can we slow down enough to pay attention to when do I feel like I've accomplished enough? What does contentment feel like? What does pleasure feel like? Can I take note of that? And this is so helpful, especially for my people who I know are out there listening, who are super high achievers and, or maybe even workaholics. And that need for doing and that reward system is so deep, is to really pay attention to what does enough look like? When do you know you've done enough work in a day? What does that sense of accomplishment and contentment feel like? How do you know you're living in meaning and purpose? Reminding ourselves what that feels like can be really helpful to connect you back to your needs and to know that these are strategies of how to meet your needs. Something I've witnessed when I've worked with new mothers in my coaching practice, or mothers within the first year or two of their baby's life. And typically in that transition where they've gone back to work and there's just a lot of emotions and hormones flowing and lack of sleep and pressure and desire to be doing really well as a new mom and back in your job and climbing the corporate ladder and just feeling this tug of war energy. And sometimes there's just even that basic need of rest, like a literal sleep that they are missing in their life in this current stage that really ripples into many different areas of their life. And the practice of even just having compassion for the lack of that need being met, that ouch, right? This need is here and it is not being met at this time in my life. And that fucking sucks. And how can I just be with the ouch of it, not trying to fix it or solve it right now, but just acknowledge it. And when they can do that, what I've seen is a softening comes. It's like they take this guilt and this pressure off of them and they feel like, wow, I just feel deeply seen right now. And I know that it's not me that's messing up my life or that's not doing anything right. And that it's just right now this basic human need of rest, of sleep, that I am not able to meet to the full capacity that I want to right now. And when we can notice our needs and name them, it also helps us live an aligned life. It helps us think about what kind of needs do we have and how can my partner support me in meeting my needs. They're not responsible for my needs, but as a teammate in life, we're here to support each other's needs being met. And when you're dating, when you're thinking about family, all of these are really important insights to pay attention to. So knowing and naming our needs gives us information to think about how do we want to be living and honoring this one beautiful life that we have to live. So in this moment, I welcome you to allow everything to just settle, and let's take a pause together. If it feels authentic, you can place a hand on your heart, maybe a hand on one cheek, and just take a moment to tune in and ask yourself, what do I need in this moment? Do you have a physiological need? Water, that's what's coming up for me. Rest, nourishment. Is there a deeper need for connection, touch. Maybe you notice a need of feeling seen or respected, need of being integrity. Whatever it is, take a moment to just tune in and notice it and name it if you can, and do your best. This is a practice. It's kind of like learning a new language. You're learning the language of your heart, of your human heart and soul. So listening in, listening deeply with a lot of care, a lot of curiosity. And just see if you can tenderly hold that need. You don't need to act on it in this moment. Or maybe you're inspired to, but just practicing it, to name it, to notice and name that this need is here. And the more we can slow down and use our mindfulness muscles to listen, to pay attention, to notice with curiosity and care of what's here in this moment, it allows us to release the judgment, and it allows us to slowly be in relationship to these needs with more respect, more honoring, more understanding, more care. I would so love to hear from you about what resonated after listening to this episode. What came alive for you? What did you learn about yourself? How do you see this practice of being able to just even ask yourself, what do I need? How that's going to impact your life, your relationships, your health, your well-being. And if you are curious to learn more about your needs and something awoke inside of you to do some of this deeper inner self exploration, I welcome you to reach out and see if mindfulness coaching is a fit. And we can explore that together by signing up for a connection call. You can also check out my new book, 100 Mindful Moments to Balance and Energize, where you have these 100 holistic different tips that are here to inspire you to pause and check in with yourself around, what do I need in this moment? And which mindful moment out of these 100 feel the most aligned to my needs right now? So there's so much juiciness here. And again, it is a practice. It's not about us being perfect. I'm wishing you all of the best, and know that you are not alone on this journey as you practice being a human. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing me into your ears, your heart, your mind. Please take a moment to send this episode to somebody in your life that you care about. And let's continue to support each other all over the world, continuing to note and name and practice meeting our needs. Thanks for being here. And until next time, stay centered.